everyone, and welcome back. We've got a truly massive show for you today. So, Cyberpunk has been delayed again. Then Xbox are still hungry, and that's even after the aggressive plans that we covered in yesterday's video and the Bethesda acquisition. Then, switching sides, the PS5 has already been ceded to the press for hands-on, and Facebook is entering game streaming in a way where, well, it's pretty obvious that you will definitely be the product. And of course, a whole bunch more with, as well, another veteran leaving Blizzard Entertainment for a game development startup. So there's a lot to cover today, and to support the team that covers this stuff and also get some sweet loot in the post box from our game dev team, then hey, you can check out the Patreon, get all this. It's also Rogue Month, you get the Rogue pin, and yeah, you guys know what's up. Supported 2 jobs in the YouTube team. Big growth, all very awesome. Thank you for all of your support. And with that said, let's get going. The Cyberpunk situation is actually quite simple. They have delayed the game by 21 additional days until the 10th of December this year. Now, that was surprising to many people because the game went gold, right? That actually meant the discs were being printed and the game was locked in. This, of course, meant that many people very much believed it would be coming out on its release date and therefore did things like book time off work. Well, it turns out that yes, the game has went gold, but the team actually think they need even more time than they initially thought to work on the Day Zero patch for the game. And they actually cite that having a same-day launch on current gen, next gen, and PC, that's basically a really large challenge. Now, the thing I would say here is that originally they would have had a lot of time to prepare for the next gen because they would have been launching earlier, like way earlier in this year. But of course, the delays then pushed it up to them having to do a simultaneous release. So this essentially means that their current situation is not the situation that their initial project planning, let's just say maybe, 3-4 years ago, not initial, but their project planning in the past basically would not have accounted for a release environment like the one that they're now essentially forced into. So it's a bit weird. Now that said, they did have release dates multiple times this year. It is definitely quite surprising to me that, well, it has moved that much. It does make you wonder, like, what is the state of the bugs that, that they've actually had to run up against? And then also, there's not really been that much, like, free play footage for the game or really stuff past, stuff that would give you a lot of information beyond just the initial sort of opening stuff, which just does make me wonder, have they just been in a situation where they've had so many bugs to deal with and problems like that in the general body of the game that's why these successive delays have kept on happening? Now, for this delay, they basically said that they miscalculated the amount of time it would take for them to get enough fixes into their Day Zero patch, and that's why they've went for the delay. Now, this is really awkward because, as an example, just yesterday, as of the time of recording this video, somebody tweeted them to ask if they could book a day off, right? If it would be safe for them to book a day off work to play the game, and the Cyberpunk Twitter account replied, confirmed. Only for, of course, 1 day later, there to be a delay. Now, of course, that is just, that sort of, it shows you that this is an unfortunate, annoying situation, but realistically, that is just the social media people not being in sync with the key decision makers who actually decide on things like delays. But it maybe does show you that this delay has happened pretty quickly. Who knows, maybe there are some technical blockers that they only just discovered today. It's hard to say, really. Now, this is just an awkward situation. They really did hype up that there would be no further delays, and they were locked in. It very much seemed like we're locked in, we've increased the amount of work we're doing for every single staff member by 1 day a week. It's going to be solid, and that's not actually what has happened. And what's interesting to me is that, and I would say as well, the Cyberpunk fan base is almost certainly one of the most diehard ones on the internet, right? In terms of their love of the IP and of the company. I was surprised, I will say, doing a glance at responses with how a lot of people who seem to be their core audience are actually fairly pissed off and disappointed at this situation. And I think for those people it is fair enough, like they are just kind of being rustled with, at the very finishing stretches of things. And I'd say in a situation where, yeah, they could have booked time off work, and that really is going to suck because a lot of employers will not be particularly flexible given, the timelines that we're dealing with here. Now, of course, this is a bit of a loss for them, but there are winners in this situation. I think one of the big winners is Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and basically just the other November games. So yes, they're going to have a little bit more space because I think Cyberpunk pretty much would have walloped a lot of them. Okay, that's the situation. There's not really much to go into other than, the death march continues, right? I imagine that their day zero patch will take a lot of additional work to actually get in the state that they want, and that their subsequent patches that are no doubt going to have fixes and stuff like that will also be a pretty hasty affair. So yeah, probably a rough time for the work-life balance, but that's what's up. Let's move on. Well, Phil Spencer just keeps on talking, and we've got some more highlights for you. So, acquisitions can and will continue for Xbox. They're basically just looking for more teams and more franchises, and that's a part of why Phil said he was excited for Starfield and Compulsion's new game. And that's not a surprise because Phil also said that as Game Pass continues to grow, Microsoft will need to, as he puts it, continue to feed the subscription. Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's competition. They're going to need more there. Now, the service is seeing pretty decent growth, so there's just going to be that need for more and more and more as it grows. They'll want to keep that audience engaged. And Phil also said that he expects Xbox to be consistently in this mode of bringing more creators into the fold. And that pretty much will just mean Game Pass deals for developers and acquisitions into Xbox Studios. And that's an interesting thing because in the development community, I mean, many of us thought that Game Pass was really a gold rush that would die down. Even our local industry in Northern Ireland, there was one dev who got a Game Pass title, and that was the vibe that was going around, especially if I was to compare, Gamescom's, my first one to the one that I went to after that. Yeah, people it went from Game Pass, they're just money, it's there, get it, to, this is probably going to dry out. But maybe it's not going to dry out. I would say that's maybe a situation where Xbox really, really, really know that Game Pass is the way that they can compete, because Halo Infinite kind of isn't really that, right? Because it's so far off and it's going to be a while before their larger plans come to fruition. So yeah, going hard on that stuff, it's like their competitive advantage, right? It's the thing that Sony have not established that they have. So there's that. Now, another interesting thing for acquisitions is basically Phil talking about their renewed focus on software. And he said there that E-rated content is not a strength for them and that they want to basically get more casual content on board. So that's going beyond Minecraft. So yeah, Microsoft could look for further acquisitions to just bolster up their software portfolio there. I'm not really sure what those things would be. I have no idea what that market is like, but it does make sense. I imagine that, that rated for everybody content is a sort of thing that would do pretty well on a super value-oriented platform, just if you think about parents and stuff. So yeah, there's that. I think it does make sense. Now, Spencer also does suggest that a lot of this comes from insights based on their data from Game Pass subscribers and what they're actually playing. And I think that's important, right? Big data is really useful. And with all of these subscribers, they get more data. They can use that data to inform future decisions. Just look at how Netflix, with its algorithm, can, do a lot of green lighting and canceling of shows based on the data they get from their platform. That's what you will see with something like Game Pass. And of course, it's not just an Xbox, the consoles, right? This is something Phil also said, that to them, playing an Xbox does not mean an Xbox console, and that internally they mainly measure things based on the Xbox ecosystem. And that can include an Android phone, a Switch even, because some of their stuff's there, or a PC. Basically, for them, it's all about getting their stuff out there. Microsoft, it's about selling software. That's basically the deal here. Now, going back to Game Pass, he did say they want to diversify, but basically Phil said that they don't want Game Pass to have one game that everyone is playing forever, as it would just be a single game subscription service then, rather than, a big sort of gaming content subscription, and that he prefers the idea of being able to finish a game and move on to the next one, saying that those sorts of experiences are, as he quotes, actually better than one or two big things just hogging all the engagement. I think that's fair enough, actually, because if you train that Game Pass audience to be multi-game gamers, then that obviously plays into the business strategy of Game Pass. And this is what I mean, okay? Because every game that you put on Game Pass is a new way to acquire a customer. It's a unique sell, a unique game. So if you put your budget towards that and lots of unique games, and you train your audience to want and expect that, I think that's probably better for them in terms of growth than just putting all of their beans into feeding a smaller quantity of live services. So I think that's probably very wise. So there you go, unless Phil Spencer does any more talking, then that's probably it for that. But we do have another bit of Xbox news, and it's not particularly great. A lot of people in the comments of our videos took issue when we spoke out about how the Xbox Series S may not be the best play overall. A lot of people said, it's fine if it's 1080p. It's 1080p, but it is next gen. Well, we've already now seen some evidence that may not always be the case. The upcoming Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition looks pretty damn sweet. It's got a whole bunch of new features. You can play Virgil, Legendary, Dark Knight difficulty, reduce load times, 120 FPS mode. That's all sweet. And the X and S will share the majority of these new features, but ray tracing will not be supported on the Xbox Series S. Now, Capcom made this announcement on Twitter, though they didn't explain why the Series S won't have ray tracing. Now, there's a few different things here. You do then have to remember that ray tracing is usually done. I mean, the way to do it efficiently is, it's not via software layer or anything. It's done on actual hardware, right? It's what NVIDIA's RTX cards are all about, as an example. So if there are less capabilities there on the Series S, then yes, that would mean that something like this would happen. Now, it could be possible that there would just be a lack of time to optimize things, and this game could be a bit of a rush job anyway, considering the delayed physical edition and there being almost no new features coming to PC. But yeah, the point here is that ray tracing in the game will be available later via patch on the Series X, but will not be there on the Series S. Whereas, of course, it will be on the PS5 family from launch, because the cheaper PS5 is still hardware-wise a full-fat PS5, it's just that it's digital only. Now, this is a bit concerning that it is a genuine feature disparity between the X and the S. It's one that I think people who understand hardware, I think a lot of the PC builders, which would include most of our office, I think we'd understand why this would be the case. But I think for a lot of people who are very much, they're, I guess, just very focused on the marketing materials of these big companies and really take that as gospel, yes, something like this could be both surprising and disappointing. And that is, of course, unfortunate. Of course, Microsoft have been adamant that the power difference between these two consoles will only mean a resolution drop on the Series S, and that it's designed to be a 1080p machine. But that's the sort of thing where not all graphical features scale in that way with resolution, right? That's just not how it works. There are some things that are just fundamentally harder to do no matter really what your resolution is. And this is where this problem is appearing. And I imagine this is a problem that we'll just see as the years roll on. Then next up, a quick note to the PS5s, where the press have finally got to unbox them and, not do anything else on camera. If you want to look at that, I'd recommend hitting up Marquez's video because, it'll look goddamn gorgeous if it's one of his, and it does. Pretty good way for you to actually see that new hardware. Overall, yeah, it's ginormous. We pretty much all knew that. And apparently the new DualSense controller is actually really cool. And that's something where insiders have been testing that with the bundled Astro's Playroom, which is basically just a big tech demo for the controller. Okay, Ubisoft news. So Uplay Plus has now been rebranded to Ubisoft Plus. Incredible, but it does actually mark some changes. So, from November 10th, Ubisoft Plus will basically launch as their multi-platform subscription model. Over 100 games will be available for $14.99 a month. Now, what's kind of interesting is that the beta of this is on Amazon Luna, and will be on Google Stadia by the end of the year. And basically, it's one sub across all platforms. And of course, it's the type that does include, the big new games like the new Watch Dogs and the new Assassin's Creed. And between those different platforms, you actually get things like cross-progression as well. Interesting. Ubisoft's play and streaming is clearly that they know they can't do it in-house, so they may as well just be everywhere. And I would say that, if they can set their games up to work on streaming in general, why not distribute it to everything? I suppose the counter-argument to that is they could maybe get some sort of strong exclusivity deal, but ultimately here, what they're basically able to do is they're able to use these streaming services as a way to expand the reach of their own subscription service that's still going to work on PC and other platforms as well. So, seems pretty smart. I'd say a decent win for Stadia, who've been struggling. And if you want to know more about that, then you can watch our WTF is Stadia even doing video, which we released recently. And I'd say you find it interesting. Well, another week, another departure from Blizzard, because Dave Kosak, known as Fargo, the lead mission designer in Hearthstone, announced that he'll be leaving Blizz after 12 years. Now, he was the public face of Hearthstone since 2018. Which is when Ben Brode and co. left Blizzard to found Second Dinner. And now, one of the new faces of that IP is also leaving for a new startup game company. Kind of funny. And it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Now, of course, before that, he worked on World of Warcraft as a narrative designer, and he's taken on an important role at Deviation Games. Deviation are a new outfit, and we basically don't know what they're doing. So yes, there's another person out the door. Who's next? Who knows? We've seen so many leaks and, mutterings and murmurings that morale's not particularly great at Blizzard, and that a lot of people, senior-ish people that you will have heard of, kind of want to leave. Remember Tips Out's tweets? Well, yeah, maybe this is a part of that. Maybe he wanted to leave anyway, but certainly he is leaving for a company in the same area, and you just have to wonder then, did he get a better deal, or is it just something that's more creatively interesting, and maybe he can leverage his position as being a decently big name in Blizzard to actually make that career jump that he maybe actually has wanted to make. Hard to know, but there you go, that's what's happened. Well, yesterday we covered Facebook being absolute dicks with Oculus, and now we've got to cover them going into cloud gaming. How dreary. So they're doing it a bit differently to their competitors, where their VP of Play, Jason Rubin, said that basically in the announcement he would speak openly from the outset as a means to avoid overcomplicating things, which is quite funny because, of course, similar services like Stadia have been criticized for overpromising. Almost said overperforming. Certainly not that for Stadia, but they've been criticized for being the future of gaming, selling the world, and stuff like that. Whereas with Facebook, they've basically just said that, yeah, they're doing streaming, everything's going to be a free-to-play game, and there will be no upfront or ongoing costs, unlike other streaming services, though in-app purchases are enabled from the get-go, and that ads will be an important feature of it. So, I don't like that, but yeah, I guess they're being straight up about it, and I'm so bored. I mean... Yeah, it's Facebook streaming, and basically they said the cloud is a perfect way to offer more complex games in a seamless way. I suppose, yeah, a lot of Facebook games are not particularly complex, so it does make sense them being able to do this. But it's weird because, the reason I'm also sort of bored by this is it was a low-key announcement from them, to be honest. It doesn't even have its own name. It's just a part of Facebook gaming. But there, Facebook are making moves. They apparently have 300 million gaming users along for the ride. But, I think those are numbers technically speaking. Technically speaking, Facebook video views were in all of the billions that they talked about, but you go and talk to people who are doing advertising and stuff on Facebook video, and many people were not particularly pleased. So, I can't really see this one catching on, to be honest. Oculus has done really well because it was not Facebook. It was not designed or developed as Facebook. It was a really cool thing. It was an actual, carved out a part of an industry and got its super unique audience who loved it. But I think Facebook doing those, entirely starting off internally things, I don't know. Doesn't seem that great. Anyway, that is it for the news. So much news today. Holy wow. Yeah, pretty cool though. A lot to talk about. Of course, if you want to support the team and stuff like that, support our growth, you can check out a bunch of cool stuff on Patreon. Thank you. There you go. I flung it across the room. Anyway, yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.